And we are live. 1 minute still till 12, and then we start.
Yeah.
All right. It's 12. Well, it is 12 here in Las Palmas. It's probably a different time of the day wherever you are. Today with me, Yousef,
Hello.
Anton. My name is Andrey. All of us are from FivexL. We are going to be talking about how one can start on AWS the right way. And we have some slides to accompany this presentation, which I'm going to share with you in a second. So those are the slides. And as a warm-up, would be good to have an introduction. I can see people joining on the YouTube, watching us live. Great to have you people. There is a 1 minute delay, 1 or 2 minutes delay between us saying stuff and you hearing it, but you are still very, very welcome to put some introductions in the YouTube chat. Like if you are a developer, if you are the infra person, if you are consulting like us, maybe you are in the management, just drop a line, don't be a stranger. And another thing that you could do is to share your expectations, your general curiosity. If something that brought you here is a general curiosity to see what it's all about. Maybe you have some professional interest. Maybe you kind of already very well versed into those things, and you just have a little bit of skeptical curiosity, like thinking like, well, try to surprise me. Maybe you have a business aligned interest. Who knows? As I mentioned, Andrey, Anton, and Yousef, your hosts for today. All of us are consulting for FivexL, which is advanced consulting partner, AWS advanced consulting partner. And we work quite a lot with the startups who quite frequently coming to us to help them start on AWS, and that's why we have this webinar to actually outline all the details, how they can go about it. And another thing that requires a little bit of introduction is our fictional company that we're going to be using for this presentation. We will consider them a startup who decided to come to the AWS, and they heard about all of those amazing benefits of using multiple AWS accounts. And there are many, and you should definitely consider them. All clouds are a little bit different. So on AWS, you have accounts which are, you can think of them as a separate boxes. Not putting everything into one box is a good idea. But then how many boxes do you need? Like how they should be called? What should you put where? That's a question that's actually really hard to answer without having a context. And the question that you need to answer, like really to start with, is what is the problem that we are trying to solve? If you want to become a consultant, that's a question you should have in your book. You come to any meeting, ask this question, and you look very, very smart. And people do appreciate people asking this question. Like, what is it we are trying to solve by coming to AWS, right? You need to actually have an idea of like what your business model is and how AWS will help you on your journey to profitability and becoming a business. Also, something to keep in mind is the many companies, that's like the screenshot I took from the apparently GitHub. All the links will be on the slides, and we will share slides later. the many companies you know and love, maybe not all of them, they actually started their journey in a different way. So, like today, we know YouTube as a video sharing platform, but they actually start as a dating website. The same is most probably will happen to your company. Like when you are the small startup and you 5, 10 people, you have a certain needs, and those needs will be different from the enterprise of the 1,000 people, as well as like with your business model changes. So you need to keep that in mind. So when selecting the strategy, you need to get some things that will be relevant for your current stage and will last you till your next stage, so you don't need to rework it. Thus, AWS wrote this white paper organizing your AWS environment using multiple accounts, where they actually outline certain progressions, like where you can get started, what are the common shapes and forms, how people decide to go about multi-account strategies. So this is a really good place to start if you would like to read more. But there are also things that you need to be aware of. So yes, there are benefits of having multiple accounts, but there are also downsides, right? So you have a cost to set it up. You need to maintain the baseline. It might get harder to find things because there are few places to look at. I mean, like if you live in a one-room apartment, everything in that one room. If you have 5 rooms, you run around looking for your keys. And that's what people call resource sprawl, right? So you might not be aware of what's going on in every corner of your zoo. It requires a certain level of expertise. This requirement, I would say, going away now. Like AI can, like if you combine AI with documentation and ask it to interview you, you can get quite far. And it also will take the focus from other tasks. Plus, you potentially need additional tooling, and there will be entropy, meaning that the thing's gonna drift. So there are those. Because of those pros and cons, when making a decision, you need to have optimization criteria, right? So how do you decide what is right for you in your current situation? Because the situation of the different companies will be different. Just that's an example that I already gave, so we're going to skip it. Now let's jump to the company we have, Binga Bonga LLC, and optimization criteria that we're going to have will be resources, time, trust, and focus. Like in our work with startups, we kind of see those quite often dictating the necessary solutions. And let's say you're just starting up. You don't even have a product market fit. So your resources are very, very limited. You might be bootstrapping, you might have some angel money. It's probably you, your co-founder, and some other crazy person who agreed to work for your shares. So like the very, very limited resources. Time is also limited since you have a runaway, and it's called runaway because it's running away from you with the money you spend every month. The trust, the team is very small, and you trust each other, hopefully, because if you don't trust each other on the initial stage, I don't think that business is going anywhere. Focus is also abundant because it's like this one thing that you're trying to make to work, get the traction, and all your focus hopefully is there. Hopefully, on selecting your product market fit, not the proper JavaScript framework. That doesn't really matter. The challenges here, as I mentioned, repeatable business model. Do you have something that people care to engage with and exchange their money for? If you have something that people want to do this transaction and again, you are in a quite good place. This is like your primary challenge. Another challenge is expertise. It's rare, right? So like, I mean, your company have no name, the people are expensive, finding the right guys is hard, and like attracting them to work for you is also hard. And uncertainty is very, very high because you don't know if you're going to make it or not. And now AWS multi-account strategy for the early stage startups. Drum roll, like this. And usually founder names the account after himself, like 80% of the cases, or like other 20% will call it after the company. And yeah, whatever really, like if you don't have a business model or if you're still working on a business model, it doesn't really matter at this point of time because you don't know if you have a business yet. Single account, or people use root user for everything, multiple environments in the same account, or maybe you have a random account, like one account in AWS, another in DigitalOcean. There are people who are chasing credits between the clouds. So I would say it's not as important, but there are things that you can do that will make your life easier going forward. Like if you assume that you're going to progress one day to a more advanced stage, there are a few things that you can do. Networking. So like just don't put your databases in default VPC. It's a bad idea. It's really hard to change afterwards. And AWS actually did amazing job with wizards. Like if you go to VPC, create VPC, and there is a selector like create other resources, they will give you a decently designed starting point where you can put your stuff, and that will last you for a long time. Another thing that I think Anton will mention in his slides, it's a multi-regional CMK. So if you need to encrypt your database, just don't do that with AWS managed key because it will be only one region. If you need to do the backups or anything, it will become a headache. Create one key, make it multi-regional, be done with it. Ideally, create org management account. So like you would have your AWS organization. If you're starting with one account, you put your organization management and workloads in the same account. It will be a problem that you would have to address later on. Just create a second account, make it a management account, and be done with it. IAM Identity Center is much better. And like if you already created an account and initiated the organization, it's very easy to set up. We even made a set of videos so where I go through the AWS console and do whatever, all the things I mentioned just now, like in 20 minutes. 20 minutes now saves you a couple thousands and a few days later. So that might look like this, right? So you have your management account and your production account, because this is where your MVP lives and you don't probably need development at this point. Yeah, that would be a very decent start if you are coming to the AWS. Oops, but now things seems to be working, and we're gonna talk about that part.
It's gonna be me.
All right.
And everything seems to be start working, and our Binga Bonga LLC, starts to get still a lot of limited resources, but probably they've had some investment, they have some money to start building things, and when they start to basically understand that their business is going somewhere, and now we need to be able to work with it. We need to be able to grow, to support more customers. They have very limited time because they don't have money, they don't have a lot of people, but the trust and focus is still abundant because everybody knows each other, it's easy to make decisions, it's easy to decide on defaults. And the next slide, please. Yes. We have more contributing factors. Here, it's quite often people start not from the AWS, but from the different cloud providers, often not the biggest ones, not from the GCP or Microsoft Azure, and sometimes they chase credits, sometimes they have some limitations from the MVP platform, which does not allow them to build something custom that they want, or where they don't have a capability to meet compliance requirements if it's some controlled business, like, for example, with healthcare. And some industry circumstances, it's, for example, with trading, when you need to be close to your competitors and rest of the businesses that work in the field, and you need to have a small ping and basically be close to them. And after this, we come to the challenges. With challenges of the business right now, we have a couple of questions. Customer acquisition, we need to show our trajectory that we're getting more customers, we can support that. Everything is still working. Will it scale for B2C and SaaS? If we run a good advertisement and next morning we'll have a couple thousand more users, will it work? Will it handle the scale of the new amount of the users? And the question is mostly for the compliance. The third one, is it compliant and secure? It's a big question for the healthcare again, when you not only need to be able to show that it's working and we can scale that, but that it's also secure, and you will not have any data leaks, and that you make everything the right way from the start, right?
Do you mind if I chip in a little bit here?
Of course.
So, like, the scale is what usually B2Cs care. I mean, like, for them, the only numbers that they care is like how many customers they can acquire and how fast they can do it. With because usually the amount of transaction, I mean, the price of transactions is rather small, right? But like with B2B, you have a longer sales cycle, a less number of customers, but there is like compliance, how you show that you actually a serious business and they can trust you. So those are the drivers that quite often show up in the conversations we are having.
And when we talk about businesses like that, the more things start to become necessary when your business grows enough. You have a lot of things that you need to start thinking about. The first one is environment separation. It's, you don't really want to put your development and production in one place, because if development is broken, production should be still be running, right? So don't keep all the eggs in one bucket, as it says. You need to start thinking, as Andrey already mentioned, about having the organization management account to set up organization, have multiple accounts, and separate at least the development and production. Probably you start thinking about some kind of tooling accounts for VPN, for data accounts, for internal tools and metric, for example, metrics monitoring them. And again, the IAM Identity Center starts to become a lot more necessary, because with the company growth, you have a lot more accounts and products that you need to ship, and you have a lot more people that are working with your AWS. So you need to start managing the access on the scale, so that it's simple and you can do everything from one place. Another really cool thing that we have that we can recommend is to start thinking about just-in-time access. The idea of just-in-time access is that with SSO, you stop using IAM users and you have ability to manage all of the access from one place. But you still have one problem, which is you use temporary credentials. AWS so provides you with temporary credentials when you assume and go roll and go to the account. But permissions are still permanent. That means that if you provided somebody with access to the production account, this access will remain here until you will revoke it. And that's the problem. In most of the places and teams, we don't have a separate security guy who will be monitoring access list every day and removing unneeded access. And that's where the SSO elevator, which you can see right now on the screen, becomes very handy. The idea is that you can go into the Slack, open form, and it's a Terraform model that you can deploy. And it connects you to the Slack. And with Slack, you can go to the channel, open the form, and you, as a user who need to get access to production, for example, to check logs, or work something with a database, you will fill up the form for what amount of time, which permissions to which account you want to go, and for what reason. And then pre-configured list of approvers within the SSO elevator Terraform model will be able to approve this request for access. So, for example, you request access to the production, team lead approves it. And after 30 minutes or any time which you've chosen on the form, it will be automatically revoked. There are more solutions that you can use with just-in-time access, but we built this one with SSO Elevator. It's open source. You can check it out. Here's a QR you can see on the screen. You can take a look. It's really useful one.
Yeah, it's used by quite a number of people. We are getting notes. For instance, Vladimir was on a conference, I think in Singapore, and there were people who came to him who they knew who he was, and because they were like using SSO elevator, and told him like, look, where we are using it, and the company name you would recognize, if I would say.
And if you are a contributor, you can contribute to this project. It's open source. It's on GitHub. Feel free to fork it and then submit a merge request.
Yeah, also if you have any issues or if you want some feature to be available, we are still working on our open source. So that's something that you can just create an issue and talk with us about it. So coming back to the accounts, if you started to separate your environments and took our previous advice on this presentation, probably it starts to look something like this, where you have separated development, staging, and production for the product development. You have internal tooling set where you host your, for example, VPN, and management account. The main idea is still the same. We separating everything into different baskets so that we don't break everything at the same time.
But also you are reducing the foot traffic. Like for instance, if you have PHI, PII, or any other sensitive data in production, you don't want to have your development team working next to it. And
Yes.
the alternative, if everyone stays into the same account, you would have to limit their access like dramatically, so they cannot access the restricted data. So this is a very logical step, and like with the SSO elevator, you can reach the security posture where you can say no one has access to production by default. Once they need to access it, they get the elevated access via SSO elevator. They do whatever they need. The access request is recorded and stored, and out, so it's possible to audit. And then when they're done, it's revoked, and then again, no one has a permanent access to production.
And here we came to the quite often businesses need to have multiple productions. For example, they have one user-facing application that they need to host. They have some internal data processing, or they have separate environment for the separate customer. So we can scale that up from the side of having multiple production accounts. So, and there the idea is the same. Is that we probably don't want to have, when we allow somebody to go to the production, we quite probably don't want them to have access to all of the production environments that we have. Some of them may be with sensitive data, and they just don't need that. And multiple accounts for production solves that problem. But you can still use the same development and staging for the development of those multiple products, and just later just separate them into different accounts in production. And here we're coming to the typical mistakes that scaling startup starts to make. The most usual ones, it's not the full list, but the most usual ones. The first one is overlapping VPC seeders. It feels fine when you create the development and production separately, and you will not need to connect those networkings, right? But sometime in the end with VPN or peering or transit gateway, you will need to start thinking about that, and later you will need to refactor your networking again to be able to do so. So probably it makes sense to just separate them from the start.
One example I can give, like when it's becoming a problem. For instance, you want to do egress inspection, then you connect all your VPCs to the transit gateway. Everything flows through the same egress point. You need to set up the routing, but you have overlapping VPCs. Like, how do you set up the routing table there? So that's kind of a problem, and it's possible to solve, but why create the problem in the first place? Sorry for interrupting.
No worries. The second one is public databases, business intelligence tools, and S3 buckets. Here, quite often, people think no one will find it, right? In most of the cases, wrong. We have one practical actual example. We have another one of our open source models, CloudTrail to Slack, and the idea of the model is that it looks from all your CloudTrail events, basically access to your AWS, and then sends you alerts on predefined rules into the Slack. And we have one separate ignore rule, which ignores all of the public S3 scanning. So they will scan, bad actors will scan everything, and they will find your public databases, business tools, S3 buckets. So you need to make sure that they are not public, they are private. It would be really useful in the end. Third thing is KMS for case for everything. Quite often when your encryption needs are not controlled in the way they should be, we will have like 20 KMS case created for every need for each services, and they will have different names, no aliases, they will have no clear ownership of where this came from, is it used or not, and quite often they will be just in the same accounts with the rest of your development, so that they will be changing constantly. And that's a really big problem. We will talk about it a bit later into the presentation more. No infrastructure as code is...
Someone deletes your key and you forgot to decrypt something, and now it's encrypted forever.
Now you need to either support case or something like that. You need to spend time fixing this problem if you did not manage it well from the first place. The fourth thing is no infrastructure as code. At this stage, I believe it's just a really, really bad decision to do, because right now we already have on the previous slides we recommend to have multiple environments. And if you need to go and click ops each environment by your hands, is that just not sustainable? That will not work out. And quite often, also one of the things that we notice is that people go to the self-hosting quite a lot and spend a lot of time working on the things that they will later need to update. They will need to manage it, reconfigure it each time something changes in the next version. And sometimes it makes sense when you need to save money, but quite often not always, because it takes a lot of time.
There could be also habits, like when you hire someone, look at their background, and like for instance, if you have someone who comes in to your startup from banking, in banks, that's kind of a normal thing. You self-host everything. You don't trust anyone. They do a lot of self-hosting, but you are in a startup world, and it's different. You came to AWS because you don't want to just rent a server, right? Otherwise, you would go to Hetzner or like a cheap VPS provider and get your server there. You come to AWS to get managed services, so you don't need to do that stuff yourself, like security, like the storage and everything. It's managed for you. So if you are scaling up and like you just like a startup on AWS, lean towards managed services as much as you can. Like avoid self-hosting stuff unless that's a core feature of your product.
And on the next slides is things that would make your life easier. One of the cool ones that we have, previously we've been talking about separating everything into different accounts, development stage and production. What another cool thing that you may do is you can start using organizational units. Organizational unit is basically a basket for your accounts, which you can put accounts in. And the really useful thing with them is that you can use them to manage your permissions and IAM policies on a better level. As one of the examples which we can do is that, for example, we have one ECR repository which we want to reuse across multiple accounts in your organization, or to get those images from this ECR from each account in organization. When you're working with the just default IAM policies and default accounts without organizational units, you most probably will need to just put in each account ID into ECR policy for each account to be able to use it, to IAM policy to allow it. And each time you need to create new account, you will need to add them to this policy. With organizational units, you have a really useful thing that we will show a bit later on the example with KMS case, is that you can allow, for example, to use ECR for organizational units of your organization, not individual accounts. So you create ECR, share it with the development environment. Now full development environment can work with it and get the images. Second really useful thing is the encryption accounts. There is the same idea, is that we can create KMS case and we can create IAM policies for those KMS case to share KMS case between the accounts. We will have an example in the next slide, and we'll talk about it a bit more. The next thing that we can start to think about is business intelligence accounts and sensitive data accounts. If you know that you will have another team working on the business intelligence, or you will need to have a separate place where you're processing really sensitive data, for example, from healthcare, and you want it to be really secure and you don't want anyone to have access here, you need to consider having different accounts for them also. Another really cool thing that we mentioned before a lot is the SSO account and just-in-time access. Just-in-time access we've already discussed, but you can also create SSO account. The idea here is that one of the main things that AWS recommends is to delegate everything which is delegatable from the management account. And SSO is the same principle. You have different account, which is used only by the security team to manage the access to your organization. And the fifth one is the landing zone. Either you use Control Tower, or you build it on your own, or you get some from the consultants. Landing zone is a solution that somebody already built it for you, that you can reuse to have the account structure, to have the same baselines for each account, to have the same security policies applied to everything, where you already have something on which you can scale up. And on the next slide, we have the KMSK policy example. And here you can see that we are allowing any entity within env within the seed, we are allowing encrypt, basically encrypt and decrypt. And then we have a condition principal org path, where we are allowing only our organization and our organizational unit which we want to access this key. So that allows us to have an encryption account on the next slide. And the idea with the encryption accounts, because we already mentioned, when you don't manage your encryption needs from the start, you will have a lot of keys with different names, strange names, and no ownership, and all those problems. What you can do is you can create an encryption account where you will have one per environment, where you can create default multi-region customer managed key, which will be shared for the development, either staging or production, each for one account for each environment. And the idea is here that you create one account, one KMSK, share them with environment, and then reuse it. And the cool thing is that you will allow to encrypt and decrypt, but you will not allow anything else here. You will, sorry, everybody will be able to use this case, but nobody will be able to delete or change the key policy to break the key. That's one of the coolest things that we have with the encryption account. Another thing that you can put here is a special purpose multi-region key. If you have some sensitive data that you need to encrypt, you can create this key within the environment and allow everybody to encrypt with this key, but not allow anybody to allow only tight list of users and roles who will be able to decrypt with those keys, so that you can still use it like everywhere, and it's really simple and useful, but it's still secure, and nobody will be able to change those keys. And next cool thing is private certificates and ACM, but I believe that ACM we still cannot share to the encryption accounts.
I don't think so. It's shareable. Well, not that I remember it was shareable.
Yeah. And on the next slide, we have an example of where customer managed key and shared key created from the start will be really useful. And it's one of the simplest examples. It's when you need to share your data and snapshots of RDS between the accounts. If you use AWS managed keys, the first thing is that they are not multi-region, and second thing is that you cannot share them between the accounts. And this will create a problem for you. I believe that you will need to get the data, get the snapshot, decrypted, encrypted with the new key, and then you will be able to share it to the different account and to the different region if required. So you will save yourself a lot of headache if you will use if you know that you will need to have multi-region and multiple accounts, that if you will use just customer managed key with multi-region policy. That will be really simple and useful. And if we took most of AWS's and our advice, we probably look at something like this, where we have the same development stage in production. We also add encryption per environment accounts. We have internal tooling accounts and backup account. The main idea is still the same. We are separating everything to have more security from nobody has access to the production things, nobody has access to the encryption. Uh, Internal tooling is separated so that only teams that works with those resources have access to it. So that looks cool. And then we get to the scale up phase. I believe that one will be by Yousef.
Yeah. So once we start to scale up, the our company Bingo Bonga has quite a lot of resources right now. They're over the runway. They've launched, let's say, they have paying customers. They have stable revenue. They have uh, their team is bigger, so the trust is probably not as much because not everyone knows each other as in the previous stages. They're still focused. They have some time, but it's getting like they're getting more time, but they're a little bit like they're a little bit less focused on doing on managing everything. They're more focused on each product, everyone with their own role.
I would
Uh,
say, if I may jump here, so this is like one of the golden stages in the company life where the team is still small enough and agile. You have something that works, the money is rolling in, you are not struggling for money. But this is where the founders usually start to think, okay, that works. How do we diversify? And this is why the focus starts to drift. So like they're kind of still doing their own business, like that the business that brought them here, but they also start to consider, can we start another business line, for instance, while like we have success with the existing one.
and now we have unique challenges that we haven't faced before. We're growing. This company is growing. Whatever is working is working. Uh, like we have more than one product or more than one service that are maybe related to each other. Maybe they compete each other. There's a business sector, let's say the business part that's focusing on acquiring new clients or doing market research. And if you're a B2B company, but also any type of other company, SaaS, B2C, whatever, you may need to do some sort of compliance. SOC2 comes to mind. You may need to verify who your clients are, and any other security related things, related mechanisms that might be needed for your customers. Um, so, at this stage, things that become necessary are first having a consistent baseline, like each new account that has that will be having a new product or a new service or a new, let's say, uh, like deployment. They'll have to have the same baseline. So developers, when they start getting in, when we start deploying stuff, we know what's already there. There's no like we don't like this. This will mostly be automated through infrastructure as code. But we'll talk about this a little bit later. But yeah, let's say in every account or in every your organizational unit, it will have this networking account, just as we were talking about before, an encryption account. They'll have like a KMS key, just as we talked about before, stuff like that. Uh,
So those things used to be good to have. Now it's like they actually start to become necessary. Like it's starting to get harder to manage stuff at the scale without those. Um,
yeah, we can go back to the previous slide.
sorry.
Yes, yes, yes. Maybe there's since we've grown, since the company has grown, there's now a, let's say, a business unit. There may be like they might need to have their own account that has something uh, like a business intelligence service, like Amazon Quick, for example, comes to mind. Like maybe they will have some encrypted data on the customers that need to be anonymized, let's say, so they don't have access to like who's the actual customer, but like we have some sort of a profile. Uh, like, they are like the organizational units now become necessary, since for each new environment we'll have a separate networking account and a separate encryption account. And of course, for disaster recovery, we've seen the last few months things that we haven't even like we've only heard about that in theory. We've seen it in real life happen. Like we need backups, we need multi-region backups, and having a separate account for backups would be a good idea. Of course, the backups will have to be encrypted. There needs to be access to the encryption keys, so we'll have to configure that also. You can go to the next slide. Uh, ma- One service that comes to mind is Control Tower. Control Tower, there's a lot of debate about it online. It seems obscure, but once you understand why it's needed, you'll come to love it. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. So Control Towers helps us apply different controls to each organizational unit. So we enroll we enroll the organization into we enroll all the accounts in the organization into Control Tower. Each organizational unit, we have predefined controls that are created by AWS. Uh, there's a huge number of controls, over 1,000 right now. They are preventative, detective, and proactive. Uh, they are inherited. So, like if there's an organizational unit inside an organizational unit, like the parent, the child inherits the controls of the parents. Um, there are controls based on frameworks. So, if like you can say like I want to be compliant with HIPAA or with SOC to or PII, and you can choose like you can get which controls are needed to be compliant. I have an article about that. You can see you can go to our website and check the blog post from about 2 months ago. And it's integrated with AWS config and CloudTrail, which help you record all the actions that happen on your different accounts and uh, be notified when something happens, and all the actions are recorded and retained in CloudTrail for a period of time and can later be exported to S3 buckets. So, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, we will need to maintain a baseline. And this baseline is usually maintained through infrastructure as code. So, what do? Like, we need a new account on a new organizational unit, and we have the solution for that. We can go to the next slides, please. Yeah. So AWS has provided us with a framework called Account Factory for Terraform, which you can configure through a separate account. It uses cloud. It uses code pipeline through cloud builds. Sorry, through code builds. Uh, uh, and it will provide you with 4 repos, one for creating new accounts, one for
Let me jump in here, Yousef. Um, just a small correction that IFT is a joint project between AWS and HashiCorp.
okay.
So they develop it together. It's an open source thing that you can use. And with what you use Landing Zone, which is based on Control Tower. Usually, by default, you would use CloudFormation to deploy the account baselines. With IFT, it's possible to use Terraform, define your account baseline using Terraform. I would suggest we leave details of IFT implementation aside for this presentation, but just to focus on what you get when you have IFT, you getting GitOps style account provisioning. So as Yousef mentioned, you would have a repo, you add a Terraform module in there saying, I need to have a new account with this name, with this baseline applied. You push it to GitHub or whatever you have connected, and you get, after 20, 30 minutes of
And
that machinery spinning its wheels, because like there is also control tower involved, which is not the fastest service on earth. So you will get a new account popping up in your organization, an organizational unit where you define, and that allows you to build something people call account vending machine.
yeah,
Since you would want to have experimentation, you might want to give developers accounts like peer developers so they can play around and don't pollute shared development, for instance, with experiments that's hard to clean. That allows you to quickly create accounts and then delete them if you don't, like when you're done with experimenting. So IFT is quite beneficial, and the most important thing that it allows you to maintain the baseline at scale.
yeah. And maybe just like if you need to modify something in an account, you don't really have to uh, modify it in the account itself. Just add a line in the GitHub, and it will be done in a few minutes.
Right.
Uh, it will also define which organizational unit it will belong to. It will integrate and inherit the security baseline from Control Tower, the slide before this, and uh, like if something happens, if it fails, it's easy to be debug. You can figure out what the problem was, and you can fix it quite easily. We can go to the next slide. So the organization now looks somewhat like this. Uh, it's like we have a development environment. Yeah.
Let me jump in here because there is quite a bit of debate about how do you structure your organizational units. If you read AWS white paper we mentioned before, AWS is suggesting leading with a function which is on the right. So you would start like with workloads development, workload staging. Then you would have like for tools, blah, blah, blah. We actually usually do one on the left. We lead with environment. There are reasons for this. And like when I say we, because we have our landing zone, which incorporates all the good ideas you heard in this presentation, as any other development agency. So if you're interested, give us a call. Anyhow, so like we leading with environment because it allows to apply controls on environment level. So you don't, like for instance, if you want to have a certain assurance for production, so like you cannot use non-HIPAA compliant services, for instance. There is SCP for that, service control policy, that you can apply either on account or organizational unit level. If you use the structure to the right, you would have to go and find all production accounts and apply that SCP on account basis. If you have environment structure, then you can just put that SCP on top of your production OU, and then all accounts get it. There is a scalability question. I actually reach out to the authors of the white paper asking like why they recommend it this way. So the setup on the right would work. It gives you the maximum flexibility, especially if you have multiple business lines whose work style is not aligned. So you might have development teams who would have development, but they don't have staging, and they have production. Just like giving you an example, and then you would be able to support that with this. Otherwise, you just forcing the same structure on everyone, which I think is fine. Like if you are on a startup, right, and like if you are like moving to AWS now, even with the environment-based anchoring, that will last you for 2, 3, 4 years, and you don't need to remake it. And by the time you might outgrow it, you will have resources to do so. You will have money, you will have personnel, you will have access to expertise. If you ever need to change it, we actually think that the structure on the left still will work fine. And like if you need to create a separate structure, you can create on the side. So you just create on the side separate organizational units and put that business unit in there with their own structure if needed. So it still gives you a lot of flexibility, but it's very simple. So like we are looking for the simplicity of maintaining controls and simplicity of maintaining security when you start it, because the one on the right will make it a little bit more complicated and less cohesive. So just to explain this slide. Who wanna go with networking accounts, Yousef?
Yeah, sure. So like we created the environments for development, for staging, for production 1, for production 2, and like we have multiple resources. We have uh, like by default, as you know, for in each new account, in each enabled region in this new account, there will be a default VPC. But since we don't want to use this default VPC, like like AWS recommends that we delete it and we don't use it. So are we going to create a new VPC for each thing that we want to deploy, or are we going to like let's say we're deploying on 2 regions in in one of the production accounts? Do we have to create also two VPCs on another account? Will there be a CIDR overlap? Will we have to use transit gateways? That's why we came up with the idea of networking accounts. So um, let's say there's one VPC that's shared in the network account. There's a VPC that's shared with the encryption and with the workloads account, and like using resource sharing, using VPC sharing, and that way we can save on resources like we can save money on resources like NAT gateways, and we will make sure that like the chances of having a CIDR overlap is lower.
Right.
And you want to add something?
With this slide, there is another side of the debate, and I think this is where we might deviate from what AWS recommends. So do you create one AWS or one networking account for everything and then connect everything inside there? Or do you create a networking account per environment? So this is like quite a bit of debate. I would say one networking account at all is more economical. For instance, if you want to do the ingress, like the centralized ingress or transit gateway network, that everything stays within that account, and you don't need to replicate that 3 times if you have development, staging, and production. Having account per environment allows you to test better before you roll it to production, because like if everything, like if all your networking in one account, and like when you do changes there, it's becoming nervous, because if you break something, you break it for all accounts. So it becomes more expensive, but you're actually getting better control and better change management, so you understand it better. And another thing that Yousef mentioned is there is a concept of shared VPC. So like we've been talking about encryption account and how you share the encryption keys. Well, you can actually do the same with VPC, but what people kind of confuse, like I see a lot of confusion around that. So people think of one VPC being shared for everything. Like this is how they think about shared VPC. You just create one VPC for everything, you share, and eventually you run out of the IP space. But that's not usually how you should do it. The idea with networking account is that you would create all your VPCs within networking account and then share them to the workload accounts or like the consuming accounts. And that allows you to separate the access signs. The accounts that receive the VPC, they can deploy workloads in there, but they cannot change the configuration. Even if the person is admin in a workload account, they cannot change VPC config, like the network access rules, security groups that was provided to him, like routing, all of that managed centrally from the network account. Plus, if one day you decide to connect your VPCs via transit gateway, it's much easier if they are all of them in the same account and you create VPC attachments within the one account. Otherwise, it's quite a bit of dance to do that between the accounts where you need to invite and accept. Just don't do that. So, and I think that's an example of how it might look like, right? So you have a shared VPC with a networking account, and where you have intra-subnet with a VPN, VPC endpoint services, and then that's being shared via transit gateway. It could be transit gateway or like, yeah, what I actually showing here is there are like spoke VPCs, right? So where you shared part of the subnets, or you created the new VPCs and then connected them via the transit gateway. That's actually an example of not the shared VPC, but connection via transit gateway. We need to accelerate a little bit because we are almost out of time. Do you want to go through the typical mistakes, Yousef?
Yeah, sure. So typical mistakes that we see at this stage of startups that have become bigger, they're launched into productions. Some of them use Redshift, which is a service that's a data analytics service. It's originally by like it's meant to the name from like it's called Redshift because it's I think meant to shift from Apache, if I remember correctly. But it's an AWS service. It was created by AWS, and maybe they're, they're they're using it in the production account, which they shouldn't. They shouldn't have access to the actual customer data or at least an unencrypted version or an anonymized version of the data that's in the production account. Um, Also, there's they will have to access the production account, which we prefer not to. Uh, like keep it as minimal as possible. The access to the production account. Uh, which account goes to which function, to which team, to which product. Maybe they're using static IPs, or like it's called elastic IPs now in AWS. So you're paying for that, and we don't know which one is for which. Uh, some resources that, let's say, someone didn't create by IAC, or like they weren't imported into Terraform or CloudFormation, they may have missing tags. So try to find them and find their costs. Or uh, let's say there are IAM roles that go through different accounts. They provide access to, like, let's say you need to use the KMS key from the encryption account to decrypt or re-encrypt or launch a new database from a backup. Uh, which is which has access to it. So that will be a little bit
Yeah, there
of
is a different example here. So if instead of OU, you would use account ID in the anchoring of the actors and your policies, your development account will have one ID, your staging production will have your staging account will have another ID. So it's kind of hard to look them up, and we've seen people grinding to the halt, updating their IAM policies because they had account IDs everywhere, and suddenly they need to move from one account to another, and everything becomes super painful because they now need to go and update all those policies. But if you use OU and you move account within the OU, like you move the workload within OU, no problemo. You don't need to change anything, and everything keeps working fine.
At this point, of course, you should be considering using AFT, using a landing zone, and control tower. We've talked about all three of them. Any old accounts that were created before your organization, you'll try to re-enroll them or just uh, repurpose them, or maybe just delete them, honestly. And you'll need to know how data is going from which account to which account, how they're encrypted, which pipelines they go through for different use cases. Anything you want to add?
Now, well, data perimeter is interesting, and data flow is like when working with the sensitive data. Obviously, you need to think about how you prevent data from leaking, and usually people where perimeter comes from, people would create a network for the databases. The databases will be within the network perimeter. This is how they control the access. But if your data is in DynamoDB, so technically if someone gets IAM credential and can access DynamoDB, they can just download the data from any computer they like anywhere in the world. So how do you create a perimeter for those HTTPS-based data stores? So that's like one consideration, and I've been debating that quite a bit. But then also how data can move in your account. So you might create service control policies that would prevent data flowing in different directions. You might, in most cases, like for instance, if you have data processing pipelines, or if you're dealing with a sensitive data, you want data to flow in and then flow out through the predefined choke points. You don't want to have a possibility of the data coming in and then leaving out, like going back. So like, for instance, someone logging into the data store and being able to pull data. No, the data should be going through, and you control that as you would control the flow of the river by setting the blocks there. I know it sounds a little bit too theoretical, but I think we should do another webinar on this topic.
Maybe
And
you're using Mace to encrypt the data to remove sensitive parts of the data before dropping it on another account or in another bucket, so that other teams can have access to it.
right. Moving on to the enterprise stuff. So like now you are super duper successful, and you have things to lose. You have a lot of resources. You have quite a bit of time, but now the trust and the focus actually becoming limited because you start to employ more and more people. You don't know all of them. You don't really know what they're up to. Look at all you start suddenly need to have HR department and all of this, and like the focus is also being diluted. Thus, the challenges become security and compliance just because it's a bigger organization to manage and there are more threats. And since you're getting bigger, you becoming a target. Since now you're noticeable. When you were small, no one really knew you, and like people would not try to come and get stuff from you. But now, if you are like enterprise, you actually on a radar of the people. They know there is stuff to take, and they would come after you. So security and compliance actually becoming much higher, and your threat analysis, threat intelligence, that's becoming much higher on your priority list. You also have personnel attrition, which starts to affect your institutional knowledge. Since when you had a small team, everyone knew everything. Now people are leaving, the new people are coming, they have no idea what you got, they need to learn, and you know the story. You might have mergers and acquisitions, so you might need to move something out of your organization or move something in. And this is like where the assumptions might come to bite you, but you have resources to address them. The thing that's really necessary, I think like the account vending machine part of the landing zone is really useful here because, as I mentioned before, you're able to vend accounts and separate people. You really like when you really need to have like a threat hunting going on, potentially 24/7 security operations center, mature networking. So like you're inspecting the traffic, you're able to choke your traffic if needed, potential transit gateways. We spoke about data perimeter and data flow. Summary and takeaways. So always ask what is the problem. Consider your current trajectory. Where are you at your journey? And then use that as your guiding principle. Don't be scared of the control tower. That it's actually quite simple service. Used to be a little bit more painful to learn, but now with AI and ability to give documentation to AI, point AI to the control tower, it will be able to guide you through if you ever need. AWS organizations is great service. It's free. There is no good reason not to use it. Read AWS white paper mentioned. If you like what you hear about the landing zones and the ideas we're building in, we have one, as I mentioned, actually being built by Anton and Yousef. That's why we have them on the call. And yeah, that's some of my credentials, which I forgot to remove. With this, I think we stop sharing. We should check the questions. There was a couple of questions in the public chat on YouTube. We answered them. I believe we had questions from people signing up for the webinar. Are there any questions that we need to address, Anton? Do you have those questions in front of you somewhere?
I believe there was one question about what complexities. Give me 1 second. I will find it.
Challenges.
What are the main challenges that I need to look at when migrating from any cloud provider to AWS?
Challenges. Well, yeah, I don't think we touched it, but there are a few things that you should be thinking about. One of them is that people actually don't consider that much your personal expertise, right? So you might have someone who actually knows, like for instance, you're moving from GCP. There is Google was giving credits quite aggressively, left and right. And there are many startups who would start on GCP, their credits are running out. They heard AWS can give them some credit. So they're trying to jump to the AWS, but they have all this expertise they built on the Google Cloud, and that's not portable easily to AWS. So you can actually expect personnel attrition. Like if there are people who want to continue learning one cloud, they might actually stay there, and you would live without them. So that's like one of them. Then it's very often overlooked. That's why I'm bringing it up. Anything comes to your mind, Anton?
Do you have speaking of personal expertise, I would say like some of the customers like have things that are Dockerized by default. They're running on containers by default. So they might want to switch to a service that is a container by default, like ECS or EKS. Some rare, very limited use cases or clients that may actually need to use EKS, and they're coming from a Kubernetes environment. So, yeah. That's what I'm thinking of right now.
Yeah, so it also depends, as we discussed during the webinar, like what stage you are in. If you're spending considerable amount of time on other cloud provider, AWS actually have migration acceleration programs, and then AWS can work with you to move you around. So they will actually have dedicated personnel or like a partners like us working with you. We can hook you up with them if you want to, but you should be spending, I don't know, more than 10,000 maybe per month. That's like would be a threshold that would be considered, I believe, for that program. Like the ceiling is always moving, the way, and the threshold like is always moving. So, but you need to be spending on a cloud provider, so it makes sense for AWS to get engaged and start to move in. But if you like spending 1,000, that will be a different story, right? You potentially don't have as much real estate to move, and it's relatively easy. Usually, the hardest part always is the database. Like where you store your data, the workloads, in most cases, they're ephemeral, they could be recreated. But you're like, if you have IP addresses, that you like if you're in B2B, quite often people need to open the firewalls, and then you give them the list of IP addresses they can use to reach you when they're egressing from their data centers or their cloud to reach you. That's becoming a fixed point asset that you would need to think about moving, and like those IP addresses usually not movable between the clouds unless you own your own IP block, which you probably don't. at the early stage of the startup. So like moving your data around, the different cloud providers have different approach to egressing of the data. So quite often ingress is free, but when you want to egress your data out, that's becoming an issue because they charge you for the egress. I think AWS is notorious about that. So that's another consideration you might have. So like if you have a lot of data you need to move around, that might cost you. Or like if you want to go back, that might cost you again. So think of in this job, like what kind of the fixed assets that might hold you behind. If you're just doing the workloads, shouldn't be a really hard thing. All right, we spent quite a bit more time than we planned, but I think it still was informational. Thanks for everyone who tuned in to watch, and to all of you who are going to be watching in the future, especially if you watched till the end. We love you. Enjoy your day. Thank you. Bye bye.